Hey everybody, welcome to Learn Commercial module number 3. Today we're going to talk about tenant representation. We keep talking about it. One of the easiest and probably best ways to get jump started in commercial real estate. So yeah, hope you enjoy the first couple modules. Let's jump in. Let me go ahead and share my screen real quick. All right, so Learn Commercial, let's go. Module number 3, tenant representation. So now we're starting to get into the education of actually doing the job, getting into the business. So I hope you're excited. Let's rock and roll. All right, so why should I look at tenant representation? Again, we keep talking about tenant representation is probably the fastest, easiest way to jump in if you aren't joining a team, you're not a junior. This is just, you're just testing and getting into the business and the career beginning, the launch of commercial real estate. This is a great start. It's going to do a couple things for you. Probably the fastest way, like I keep saying, to make money. And the second thing, you get to see what asset class you like. So if you're a tenant rep broker, it doesn't mean you have to be just office, just retail. You can be, I help tenants find space. And that's going to give you a taste of what industrial looks like, flex, retail, office, right? You get to try them all, see if there's an asset class you like the best, and then you could gear all of your energy into that sector or stay a generalist. That's really up to you on how far you want to take that. If you want to jump into investment sales, the next module we talk about landlord representation. So on the flip side, you're working with the owners. Again, I know the last module we talked so heavily about lead generation and how important it is to go after listings. So if you are a tenant rep broker, just realize that most of the tenant rep brokers, they don't get listings. They strictly stay on the tenant rep side, and then the landlord rep side, that's just their focus. That's in the bigger firms, at least. With the companies that I've been with, we just, if we get business and we know we can add value and help and service our clients properly, let's rock and roll. So let's go. All right, so what is a tenant rep broker, right? The definition is a commercial real estate tenant representative is a licensed real estate agent that represents tenants who lease office, retail, or warehouse space. Now, the definition of a lease, a written agreement under which a property owner allows a tenant to use the property for a specified period of time in return for payment of agreed upon rent, right? Sounds kind of rudimentary, but there's lots of different kinds of leases as well. Like we said, we broke down gross, absolute, triple net, modified gross, ground lease, right? All right, now we're gonna jump over to, I have a Word doc PDF, which I didn't want to just have a ton of slides because it's just too much information. So we're going to jump over to that document, and this will be in your resource library as well. All right, so here we go. Talk about the definition and the definition and again of the lease. All right, so commercial real estate is generally grouped into 6 primary categories. Special use, which includes hotels, restaurants, sports facilities, and churches. We have retail stores, shopping malls, community centers, power centers. Industrial, which includes industrial property, office, warehouse, or flex, garages, manufacturing facilities, and distribution centers. If you're unsure about flex, flex is just a combo. I know we talked about it in module 1, I believe, or intro to commercial, but flex is just a looks like a warehouse, but it has a combination of office and industrial space combined. Healthcare, which includes medical offices or condos, medical centers, hospitals, nursing homes. Multifamily, which includes apartment buildings of 5 or more units. So on the 1 to 4 family, that's exactly what it is. So on the residential side with an FHA or a residential loan, you can go up to 4 units. And that's still considered residential. Once you hit 5 or more, it jumps into the commercial world. You have to get a commercial loan, and the numbers just change a little bit there. Offices, offices and office buildings, office condos, towers, skyscrapers, you name it. And there's also mixed use properties, which have retail in the bottom and residential or above office, right? So you have retail in the bottom or residential somewhere in the mix, just a mix of different concepts, which are popping up everywhere. Most major cities now have multiple areas where they have a community center, which has shops in the bottom, bars, restaurant, a dry cleaners, a convenience store. They'll have residential units above it, or residential and office, or just office. There's a ton of those. I mean, what a great concept, especially for the bars and restaurants. If you have a massive office component above, or restaurant, or retail, I'm sorry, or residential, you can just come downstairs, grab breakfast, grab dinner, have after work cocktails, have a happy hour. I mean, so convenient. All right, so let's go into a little bit about the pros and the cons of leases or leasing versus owning, right? So the pros, the pros, you can most likely afford a larger, better space with a better location because you're not outlaying so much capital, right? If you wanted to be front and center in the central business district, if you wanted to buy that piece of real estate, it's going to cost you an arm and a leg. It's going to be crazy expensive. And more than likely, it's going to have more than you need. It's going to have a bigger component, which is going to lean more on the investment side as opposed to just your needs. Now, some people do say, why wouldn't you just buy something instead of lease? But sometimes buying is not always the answer. Sometimes leasing is better, because if you're moving into a market and you're unsure at the speed at which your company is going to grow, if you're going to really love this area, if there's going to be better opportunity later, you may not want to commit and buy an asset like that. You may want to start small, test that market. After 3 to 5 years, you can expand, you can get a bigger space, you can move, have a second location, right? It gives you more flexibility. You can walk away at the end of the term, right? Sometimes if we have a bad market and you're unable to sell, you just lost a lot of equity. Again, it just gives you some flexibility. It requires much less capital, right? When you're buying a commercial property, if it's a bigger facility, you're probably not going to occupy 50%, so you have to put down 25% or more. If you are occupying, SBA has some great options where you could potentially only put down 10%, but you still have to put down the 10% and then spend money to finish the space out to meet your needs so you can operate efficiently. Whereas on the tenant side, you don't have to put that down. You're putting a security deposit, first month's rent, and then you will most likely have to outlay some capital to finish the space out to your needs, but also we're going to get money from the landlord to help us out with that as well. So way less capital out of pocket. Right? The owner is financing your acquisition basically. And it's 100% tax deductible. Some of the cons, right? There's no equity buildup or appreciation. Just like when you buy a house, you're just paying someone else's mortgage off for them. But that's okay. It's not always a bad thing. Just make sure you understand the ins and outs, the pros, the cons, and what's the right decision for you and your company. Limited and or expensive, right? There's generally speaking more opportunities to lease than there is to buy. So if there's very few opportunities, they can charge a premium. You're going to be overpaying and then still have to spend money on finish out. Upfront capital, like we keep talking about, it's going to be a lot of capital upfront when you buy. Now on both purchase and a lease, if it's a first generation space, it's going to cost you the most money. So first gen means it's in shell condition. They don't have the plumbing's just, they have a cut in for plumbing, but they don't have restrooms. The electric's not ran. There's no HVAC. There's no flooring. There's no walls. That's a first generation space, a shell space. That's going to cost the most money to get it in the condition you need. Ideally, we'd all love to find a second generation space because it's just so much cheaper. They've already had the HVAC run, electrical, plumbing, walls, right? We're going to need to spend some money to reconfigure possibly, but it's going to save you a ton of money and time. Going from shell space requires a lot of time to get permits and all that fun stuff. It's really exciting, but it can take some time. Responsibilities of ownership, maintenance, taxes, management. If something goes wrong, no cost recovery or depreciation or interest deductibility. So when you're looking at your taxes, there are some tax benefits as well, but both have tax benefits, just a different way. All right, let's look at the types of leases real quick. All right, we got full service or gross lease. That's base rent includes all operating expenses and taxes. Common for office buildings in a lot of markets. Where I started my career was in Dallas, and most of the leases were full service or gross, or they would say full service plus E, meaning they would pay your rate would include all the expenses. They would just tack on electric. And usually that'd be anywhere from $1.25 to $2.50 a foot, depending on the size of the building, how old the unit was, how energy efficient it was, et cetera, et cetera. Then we have modified gross. Modified gross is kind of like a triple net lease, which we've mentioned a few times, It's basically where you as the tenant have a base rate, let's say it's $20 a foot, and you are going to cover some of the expenses the owner incurs to operate and own that facility. That could be a combination of common area maintenance by itself. It could be common area maintenance and insurance. It could be just insurance and taxes, right? There's a combination. It's not a full service, but it's not a full triple net lease either. You have the triple net lease, where tenant pays a share of all operating expenses in addition to base rent. It depends. And right now, we've seen the triple net cost in 2020, actually probably starting in 2017 or 18, escalate dramatically. And that's because taxes have been increasing a lot. So like in downtown Austin, for example, we've seen triple net expenses $16, $17, $18 a foot, which is crazy. And then further out, I've seen some triple nets that were like $5 a foot. So different markets, different locations. Usually the biggest line item is taxes. So when you're paying a triple net lease, just be aware your base rate is whatever you negotiate on the rate, but the triple net charges can go up and down based on what the owner is willing to do to fight the taxes, get a better insurance rate, less common area maintenance, because technically, if they word it right in the lease, they can pass on anything that it costs to operate the facility. That includes property management fees, right? Restriping the parking lot. So just be careful. Look at the fine print on the common area maintenance and really see what that entails. Because in the triple net charges, at any time you can audit and make sure they're not overcharging, because the triple nets are supposed to be a pass-through. It's not for profit. Okay. Let's see, absolute net lease. Now, a lot of people love the absolute net lease because it truly is mailbox money, unless the tenant goes bankrupt, because they are responsible for everything. Now, on a normal lease where you have a triple net lease, the owner is still required to maintain $2 million in insurance or whatever it is for that property. They're still responsible for the bricks and the sticks, the majority of the structure, right? On an absolute net lease, all of that falls on the tenant. You see some Walgreens, some banks have this, but absolute net lease, the tenant is responsible for everything. That's a pretty awesome thing. Yeah, CVS, banks, some QSRs, quick service restaurants. All right, let's talk a little bit about some areas to pay special attention. You know, right before that though, I want to go back to these leases. So in a struggling, slow, or challenging market, we see more full service gross leases because it gives more comfort and more stability to the tenants in their eyes, right? When the market's rocking and rolling, everyone slowly tries to switch to a triple net lease to maximize profitability. Because the problem is, if you have a full service lease, let's say it is $20 a foot for the year, and your taxes double, that's a big hit to your bottom line. Where if you have a triple net lease, you get to pass that expense, that increase onto your tenants. And the way that works is they reconcile every year. So let's say last year, your triple nets were $5 a foot in 2019. And then all of a sudden they reconciled in January and said, whoa, actually they weren't $5 a foot. We actually paid $7.50. Well, guess what? Now in 2020, they're going to reconcile the numbers, say, hey, you were short $2.50 a foot last year. Not only do we need you to reimburse us from what we had to actually spend, but your new triple net rate we're going to charge you is $7.50. That's how it works. So it can be a lot of money out of pocket, and it can unfortunately put people out of business. It's there for a reason, but man, definitely great for landlords, not so great for tenants. So one way you can help your tenants with that is try and put a cap on it. You can say, you know, our triple net expenses, we're not agreeing to have a 1 year jump over 5%, over 7%. And then most landlords are going to come back and say, that's fine, but only on controllable expenses. We're not going to take the hit if the city, the state raises taxes or reevaluates our property and it jumps up 15%. We're not taking the hit, but we will take the risk for what we can control. That's what we typically see. All right, so areas to pay special attention to when you're working on a lease. So these are just items in the lease or in conversation you need to have a better understanding, because these are kind of the, I don't say the trouble spots, but these are the things you need to be aware of and make note of, okay? So commencement and termination, right? Just make sure you get the dates right. We're probably gonna say this a few times, but There's been several people who get burned on the dates. It's more prevalent in a purchase because you have more money in the line, right? The deal's never done till it's done. On a purchase, it's obviously when it says funded, but on a lease, before everything's executed, you just need to make sure you understand the commencement and when the termination is. We've had instances where we have execution of a lease and then commencement is later, and there was confusion about when the tenant needed to start paying rent. Because generally speaking, when we're doing a lease, you could sign today and say, great, I'm signing, I'm agreeing to this space, but the space isn't ready for you. And everyone knows it. I need 60 days to finish out the space just so I can open for business. So Mr. Landlord, I'm not going to be paying rent that 60 days while we do the finish out. So commencement is 60 days later, right? And sometimes it takes longer, depending on the level of finish out. Sometimes it could be 2, 3, 4 months. Obviously, they try and do it quickly because every day you're not open, you're not making money. But if there's confusion or there's a delay, we've had instances where the tenant thought differently than we explained and they signed, and they ended up having to write a check for like $60,000 because they just kept delaying and delaying and delaying and were unable to open for business. But they signed an agreement saying this was our commencement date, it's time to go. So commencement, termination. And guys, talk about, these are the questions you need to be asking in the mastermind, right? Go out there and say, look, I've had a problem with the timing, blah, blah, blah. Just go ask questions. That's what it's there for. Let's use the community. Let's all help each other. All right, operating expenses. We just talked about that a little bit. Make sure you have clarity on what they're rolling into the CAM charges. That's where they're gonna hide or put anything that it could cost to operate the facility. You wanna get clarity there. Taxes and insurance, self-explanatory. CAM, check it out. Operating expense escalations, like we just mentioned, you wanna cap if you can. If I'm a landlord, I'm gonna say no. I'll say I'll cap the common area maintenance charges, but nothing to do with insurance and taxes. It's too much liability on the landlord side. All right, services. What is required to be provided by the owner? What is the tenant required to pay for and set up? HVAC, who is responsible? Now, every time I work with the tenant rep side, I always try and protect my client with the HVAC, because from the landlord perspective, this is how they feel. Well, look, you, Mr. Tenant, you're going to be running your donut shop out of my retail center. I don't know if you're taking care of the AC. I don't know if you got it cranked to 58 degrees all day, all night. It's just running like a dog. I don't know. I'm not sure if you changed the filter out properly. I don't know if you got it serviced. I don't know if you've just taken care of it, period. If that's the case and you break my brand new AC unit, why should I, as the owner, be responsible? That's the landlord side. The tenant side is, well, I'm operating it, so of course I'm going to be taking care of it. This is my place of business and I need to have it working properly to help our staff and our company make money. So of course we're going to take care of it. And I only signed a 3-year lease. Why would I be responsible for paying for an AC that should last 20 years if I'm only here for 3 years? What if it breaks on my 2nd year? Like, I'm only here 3 years. That doesn't make any sense. So you can see both sides, but if I'm working for my client who's a tenant, right, my job is to help minimize any risk they may have. So what I try and do is say, right off the bat, I say, look, landlord, you're responsible for the HVAC. Anything goes wrong with it, you take care of it. And then they, of course, they know that is a tenant responsibility. And then I say, okay, tell you what, we'll agree to get the unit serviced twice a year on a service contract, and we'll be responsible for the first $500 per occurrence per unit. So I try and word something like that where, look, if something goes wrong, look, I'm gonna be proactive in getting it fixed, and I'll not take responsibility, but I will make the call, pay for that initial service contract, see if we can't get a cheap fix that's quick. If something major happens though, you as the landlord need to take care of it. So that's what I try and do. It works well most of the time, but not always. And that's mainly on industrial or retail or smaller office. When you get into the big office towers, usually they have a massive unit on the roof and it covers the entire building. So you won't have to be responsible for that. It's just a different deal. Those are the ones where you see the +E on the lease, because they're going to have a charge that's going to come back. All right, fire and casualty. Just understand the insurance needs and requirements on both sides. Indemnification, insurance, liability, and subrogation. Just read these paragraphs and make sure you have clarity, right? Now we're going to talk about these in the mastermind and on the Facebook closed community, because I've only had obstacles or challenges with insurance and what is or isn't covered when something happens. With the subrogation, liability, nothing like that's ever popped up for me, at least in 15 years. So I don't worry too much about that. But what I do need to make sure is when I'm reviewing a lease document, I have clarity on the paragraph and what it's meaning to say and what it says. And then I go to my client and say, do you understand? Do you have any challenges? Do you have any reservations with this language, right? Now, I always, and we always must preface, we are not attorneys. Now, I've seen enough leases, I've read enough leases, I have a pretty good idea of what all these paragraphs say. But if there's any confusion, any uncertainty, go get an attorney. It's not worth it. While it may cost you $1,000, $2,000 up front, it could save you a massive headache later on. Now, also be wary, attorneys also go a little over the top sometimes. So just be cautious there. All right, tenant owner default. What happens if the owner defaults, if the owner didn't fix something in a timely manner, whatever? What are your options? Same vice versa. If I can't pay rent, if I don't pay rent, what happens then? It is much different than residential. Residential, you definitely have stricter regulations and laws on what you can and can't do because you're dealing with someone's home, right? This is different. Most states, I believe, I know at least Texas, day 3, you put a notice, non-payment of rent, lock them out. I mean, it's pretty quick. You can lock them out pretty darn quick. I forgot how many days it was. I haven't done it in a while. Because I used to do some property management on the commercial side. But it's a no pay, no play. So just make sure you understand what happens, what could happen in the event of, right? Subletting and assignment. Almost every single lease has subletting and assignment language. Just make sure you understand it because they're all going to have a little bit of a different type of language. Number one, you want to make sure you have the capability of subletting, and it's always predicated on the owner agreeing to the tenant, of course, but just make sure it's in there and make sure the language is favorable and it's not unreasonable. ADA, hazardous waste. Now, usually hazardous waste, unless you're dealing with, old dry cleaners, because they use a lot of chemicals. If it's the actual cleaning center, if you ever buy a retail center, make sure if it's a dry cleaners, it's a drop station. So they clean all the clothes somewhere else. They bring the clothes there. You just pick them up at that location, right? It's more challenging if you buy the actual chemical area where they use the chemicals in the cleaning. That's a different story because some of that stuff can leak into the soil and then you can't get it insured. You can't get a loan on it. So just be cautious. I say that I had a client who bought a warehouse, or we were looking at buying a warehouse in Dallas. I think it was in Garland. And we did the inspection report. Then we did a phase 1 environmental study. The phase 1 environmental study came back. They were buying it, not leasing, but they had chlorinated solvents, which was used to clean the printer equipment. And if you don't know, most of these chemicals have a shelf life. So they'll die off in 5 years, 10 years, 1 year. This was 10,000, a 10,000 year shelf life. So yeah, we did not buy that property. So just be wary of the chemicals, but it doesn't come up that often. Now the ADA could. So sometimes when you get ADA, in order to get a certificate of occupancy, which we mentioned here in a moment, things need to be ADA compliant. So just before you start down this path, when you're looking at a lease space, you want to get a space planner / engineer, someone to come in and look at this property and say, this is what we need to get the CO. This is what we need to make the space usable. These are the permits we got to pull. They're going to give you all that in a report. So you want to make sure you have full understanding, because some of the cities, counties, states, if you do minor repairs, like just $10,000 in cosmetic interior, you may not have to pull permits and nothing changes with the county or the city. Now, if you do like $50,000 or more in a rehab, renovation, a big renovation, it could trigger the city as a new development. And when that happens, you need to bring everything up to code on ADA. And that can be a massive expense. So just be wary, just be aware of what the requirements and what could be needed to have done. Because for every inch of elevations, 1 foot of horizontal concrete for a ramp, just for example, if you have stairs leading up to your center. So just always find out what the ADA requirements are. All right, options, renewal, and expansion. So when you look at the options of a contract, all it's saying is, if we love this location here, we're already approved to renew. You can't deny us renewal. That's why you would add that language in there. Because think about it. If you just had a rockin' business for 4 years and you said, we're not going anywhere. This is amazing. We love this location. And then the owner had a buddy who also had a restaurant and needed that location. When you came to renew, he's like, hey, I would really love to, can we get a new lease going? The owner could say no, and you have no recourse. That's why you want to put the options in there. Amendments. Just make sure if you have any amendments, they are attached, you fully understand, you know the timelines, you know what they spell out. Financial review, what is needed during lease term, not pre-lease. And I say that because when you speak to a landlord or a broker, generally speaking, if they're unsure, they don't know who you are, the tenant, the company, they're going to want to see some level of financials either on the business or the owner, right? And make sure they get comfortable with spending money on commission, spending money on tenant improvements, and agreeing to have them as a long-term tenant. Now, during the lease, though, sometimes on the larger centers, the lender for the owner is going to require financial review. That could be every quarter, that could be once a year. They're going to evaluate how solid that investment is for their paper, for their money, right? And one thing they may require is to see financial statements, a cash flow or a P&L statement from a CPA from your company in order to deliver it to the lender of the owner. I haven't seen it much lately, but I used to see it all the time. So just be careful of that. Just make sure you understand what it is. And if they do say it needs to be from a CPA audited, I would say just try and ixnay that. Don't make it so you have to spend a ton of money. Just have your CPA run a report, but not audit it. All right, the zoning. All right, so the zoning, just make sure it's zoned for your use. Just because it's zoned industrial doesn't mean every industrial use works there. Just because it's zoned retail does not mean every retail will work there, right? So just check the zoning, call the city, find out for sure. Don't second guess this. Now the CO, always need to get a certificate of occupancy to open for business. That's where the city comes out, make sure everything's within code and compliance, and you're good to go, issue you a CO. The tenant improvements, make sure if you negotiate tenant improvement allowance, dollars, configuration, you're staying on top of it to make sure it's done properly and according to the lease document. Right? All right, let's go over the operating expenses. So these are going to be hiding in those triple net charges. They can include some or all of the following depending on lease structure: property taxes, property insurance, various maintenance, building, landscape, elevator, property management, utilities, and janitorial costs. So again, just try and read the fine print. What do these triple net charges, what are they? What's in there? So general, when working with the client, understanding the needs, wants, and why are very important. Asking questions thoroughly will tell you what the most important factors are and which can have some wiggle room. If they're new to the commercial world, this is where you guide them through the process and help them make the right decision, right? Because some people just analysis paralysis. Well, I don't know about this location. I don't know. And sometimes they just have to get started. Every day they're not in business, they're losing money, right? Remember, we are working towards clients for life, not a one and done. So customer service and keeping their best interests at heart are on the top of the list with your fiduciary responsibilities. Make sure you give fantastic customer service. Start building that database. Build raving fans. Learn to mirror and match the people you are speaking to. Know if you have an alpha, a high D, or a social butterfly, high I, or an engineer, high C, and learn how to proceed with each for maximum results. I say that because if you're getting in the phone with an alpha male or an alpha female, you may have 15 to 30 seconds to get their attention, right? They want you to get to the point. They don't want you to go over pleasantries. They're like, why are you calling me? Why should I care? Right? It's okay. Get after it. If you're calling the high I, they want to sit there and talk. How's the family? How's everything going? How's business been? Man, this weather's been crazy. Can you believe we've all been in shelter in place for too long and going crazy, right? They want to have a conversation. Just know who you're talking to and mirror and match. The best thing you could do is try and start with thinking we're a high I, right? How are things going? How's business? And then as they respond, shift gears accordingly. So just pay attention for cues, read up on the DISC. If you've never taken a DISC profile test, go to Tony Robbins. They have a free version you can take. It'll spit it out for you. And just read through that, get a knowledge of that so you can mirror match best you can. It is important. And it's gonna help you, promise. All right, so let's go through the start to finish on the tenant representation side. All right, so lead generate. Cold call, sphere, referral, network, doesn't matter where you get a lead from, you're gonna get a lead. It's gonna happen. Now the goal here is to set an appointment. Don't sell on the phone. Always come from contribution. Be a resource, not a salesperson, right? We're not selling them a product. We're showing them the opportunity and then showing them space and then making sure it's right for their business. This is the most important single thing we as realtors can do for our business. Like we keep talking about, lead generate, lead generate, lead generate. So important. So we lead generate, and you can sell on the phone. It just takes some experience. Once you've been in the business a long time, it's much easier. In the beginning, get a face-to-face. All right, so after you lead generate, we got to do follow-up. Follow-up is right behind it. Input prospects into contact management system where you can track calls, emails, notes, and set reminders. Best systems will also allow you to set up a drip campaign to constantly have you in front of them as a reminder. If you remember our conversation from the last module, if someone forgets, it's not their fault. If they just forgot you're a realtor and they're your cousin, it's not their fault, it's your fault. Our job is to stay top of mind. You have to constantly be top of mind, posting, relevant. Follow up, lead gen, follow up, educate, lead gen, follow up. All right, appointment, set the appointment, right? I know some of this stuff is over the top basic, but hey, you know what? Sometimes we got to go back to the basics. Some people forget. Some people think, you know what? They're just going to trust me because I'm a rock star. And so I don't need to worry about my first impression. Dress to impress. Always dress professionally. First impressions still matter, right? I think less than they used to. Just like, for example, tattoos back in the day were frowned upon. Now, I don't think many people care that much. Of course, unless you have face tattoos and you're going to a business meeting, that could be a little awkward, I guess. Arrive early. Bring company material along with any information about you and your business. If you are brand new, use the company strength to stand on. We keep talking about that. Research the company you're meeting with prior to arrival. Write notes in the company, right? Show you are a professional. Know who the founders are, the founder, if you're talking to that person, what their past history's been. Is this their fifth business, their first business? Find out anything you can. Come prepared. This will show you are prepared and a professional. If you are dealing with a foreign national, research customs prior to meeting as well, so you are sure not to offend or do anything to offend them, right? That's important. So if you're dealing with foreign nationals, do some quick research, follow some guidelines. It'll go a long way. And it, again, shows you're a professional. All right, the meeting. Always act confident, stand straight, look them straight in the eye as you're introduced or are introducing and give a firm handshake. Do not give a weak handshake. Nobody likes the weak handshake. I don't care who you are. Older, younger, man, woman, give a firm handshake. Nobody likes the fish handshake. It's just awful. Don't do it. A good handshake is key when dealing with business owners. Simple, yet powerful. Remember, mirror and match. You need to know whether to jump straight into business or build rapport relationships first. When in doubt, start building rapport first. You will know quickly if you need to shift gears, right? That's that, start with the forward, family, occupation, all that fun stuff. If you need to, but shift gears quickly if you realize you're talking to an alpha. They don't care. They really don't care. It's like, while you're talking, they're actually looking at their emails. So get to it. Down to business. Ask questions, right? Find out the what, why, where, when questions. Listen first, then write down notes and repeat them back to make sure no mistakes or possible expansion of an answer are needed. The typical information needed would be type of business, type of property, location, size, budget, term, special needs, future expansion needs. If this is a new business, a few more items need to be covered. Have you been in this industry before? Do you have a business plan? How are your financials? Why this business? The ownership is going to want to see a business plan, who the key players are, and to make sure even if the business fails, your client has the ability to pay the lease, right? So just prep them. You want to prep your client. You don't want to set them up for failure and just waste a whole bunch of time. Get this done up front. Ask all these questions. Sit down, have coffee. Proceed with expectations. When you'll get back with them, how often would they like to have communication? How often would they like you to communicate with them, and how? Email, text, call, timeline of events to come. Because some people say, you know what, I'm still operating my other 2 centers. Just let me know if you find something. We're not in a hurry, right? They're setting the expectation with you. Set that expectation. If they're expecting you to call them every other day just to say nothing, then do it. When leaving, always thank them for the opportunity to assist them and ask for the referral. So anytime you're meeting with anybody about business, provided the conversation went well, if the conversation went poorly, or you don't think you built rapport, you don't think they saw value in you for some reason, one, use that as a learning tool. Go back, learn, adapt, right? And grow. If you think it went well, ask for the referral, always. I really appreciate the opportunity to assist you in your company. If you know anyone else I can be a resource for, I would greatly appreciate the introduction. Thanks again, and I look forward to speaking with you soon, right? Every time you talk, and maybe even the bottom of every email. Upon arriving back at your office, this is after your first meeting, write a thank you note and send it. Don't wait. So go to the meeting, go back and write a note. Just get out of the way. It takes you literally a minute. The small things mean the most, right? Get into action. Begin necessary searches, calls to find the best suitable options, given your time. So I know in the Jumpstart guide also, we talked about time blocking. So every morning, ideally, you'd like to be education, lead gen, follow-up, which means in the afternoon, it should free you up to have these meetings, to have these property searches, to write these notes, right? I know some people think no one wants to see a note. Actually, how do you feel when you do get a handwritten note in the mail? No one gets them anymore. So when you actually get one, it makes you feel good. And you remember, it's the small things. It's like the last module we talked about, giftology. Be different, be unique, go the extra step. People remember it. If you want clients for life, act like it. All right, so property options. All right, so we found several options, meeting what our client told us during our meeting. This is what we want. Now, one thing we have to do is call the listing broker and ask if your client's use is acceptable at this location. Other tenants may have a restriction on similar business types moving into the same property. So unlike residential, there's a couple things we have to do as realtors. We have to call the broker, number one, because they don't update the CoStar, LoopNet, or Crexi that often, the brokers don't. We have to make sure it's still available. We have to make sure our use, if they know, will be okay there. And the third thing is we have to make sure no one has an exclusion. Because on these larger retail centers, if there's a nail salon, they could say, we're signing a 5-year lease, but no other nail salons can come into our center. That's an exclusion, right? There could be a bar doing the same thing. There could be a golf store. I mean, pick a store. They could just have an exclusion and not allow you to open up a second. So that could hinder a lot of people. So just ask. The brokers will meet you on site. So you need to make sure of the time and day that work for you, your client, any other broker, especially when setting up multiple tours in one day as they need to be consecutive, right? Waterfalling tours is tough because you're depending on other people and their time. Unlike residential, or you have a lockbox, you just go up to the door, you walk yourself in, or a combo, it's not like that. In commercial, I'm meeting the other broker on site. The broker is talking to me and my client about what they do, why they like it. This is the benefits, the pros of this location. They're selling their spot to us, and this is why we should be there. And they're getting to know more about what my client does. So when he goes back and talks to the landlord, he can say, I toured with so-and-so today. I think this would be a great fit. He's already doing his job and trying to sell that as well. Try and wrap this up. But you have to waterfall it. So if we had 3 centers, you want to space them out properly because inevitably one's going to be late. And then if your waterfall is screwed up, because we have to meet a lot of people, it can be challenging setting up tours. The nice thing is later on, if you start to get a relationship with these other brokers, a lot of times they'll just leave the door open or leave you a key once you've been in the business a while, which is nice. It makes it just much easier. You don't have to depend so much. And nobody wants to waste other people's time, right? I don't want a broker to go out of his way, wait at a shopping center, wait for us, and then I'm late, my client doesn't show up, something happens. That's terrible. And the worst that can happen is we are on our way and we drive by and your client says, I'm not interested. Then you wasted your time, your waterfall is way late, and that person's sitting there waiting. And I mean, I'm always like, look, we're looking at this property. I know you don't want it, but they took time out of their day. We're gonna go take a look at it. And the way I pitch that is, you never know though, they may have a better location once we get to talking to them about what you do and why this may not work. Then they may actually have, you know what? I actually have a tenant moving out in 30 days. That could be a good fit. Let me go find out about that. So you never know. Okay, give plenty of time between each property for drive time, questions, other broker, or your clients being slightly late. Take notes on each property for your client. After the showings, write a summary and follow up with your client. I don't know if you've ever bought a house, but if you bought a house and you saw 8 houses in one day, they all become a blur. You forgot the addresses, forgot the specifics about one property, and then you're writing an offer based on a little bit of a vague, you're like, oh, I don't remember if that was this house or the other house. Same thing. If you're looking at 4 or 5, 6 properties, sometimes they just blend together, you forget. Take notes, email them back with a picture. Jogging memory. Good thing to do. All right, property located. A property has been identified by your client. So you've done all the tours, lead gen, you followed up, you met with them, you found a property, you toured the property. Now you identified one that your client wants to get started. Fantastic, this is great news. And remember, this could be multiple properties, which will give you leverage to allow to negotiate aggressively on their behalf. In some markets, there's just not much availability. I mean, if you have 2 options, the landlord most likely knows it. That's going to hinder your negotiation skills. If there's a ton of options, you can play against each other. All right, you need to be aware of market conditions as to help educate your client on what to expect, right? If they want you to be overly aggressive and you are in a tight market with little vacancy, you need to protect yourself. What I mean by that is, like, I'll do whatever it takes. And I'll do what I can to make this work. Just understand, by being this aggressive, there's a chance we will lose this property. So just, be transparent with your clients. Like, look, I think this is the only property right now that could work. If you really want me to try and beat them up on tenant improvement allowance, free rent, and base rent, if anyone else comes behind us and makes an offer, there's a good chance we're going to lose this. Or they may not even respond. Don't insult them, right? So just be cautious. Or just be transparent with them. If that's okay with them, then fire away. But you don't want to lose the property for them and then they want to blame you. All right, make sure they understand the pros and cons of the actions you're about to take on their behalf, right? You're talking about their business. Just make sure they're fully aware. If I do this, then this might happen, right? Because in the grand scheme of things, if we're talking about $1 a foot a year, if it's a 5,000 square foot building, it's $1 difference that we're fighting over. I mean, that's only $5,000 a year. Is that really worth it? All right. We found the property, we searched it, we liked it. Now we're going to write a letter of intent. So unlike residential, we start with the letter of intent, which outlines all the major points of a transaction. It's non-binding. Negotiations for a lease begin with either an RFP, request for a proposal, or an LOI. An RFP is a request for a proposal in which the ownership or representative initiates the offer. For this topic, we will stick with an LOI, which is most common. At least for me, I've had one RFP in 15 years. These documents are non-binding and for the most part hold no legality behind them. Now I say that, but the intent of a letter of intent is if we can come together on terms in this letter of intent, we are going to move forward with the lease agreement. That is the intent of the letter of intent, right? So some people say it could potentially be taken to court, but even on the front of every letter of intent, it says this is a non-binding agreement. Right? The LOI is geared towards getting all major items discussed prior to moving forward with the lease. You want as much detail in the important items listed within the LOI as to have no surprises once reviewing the lease, right? So please take a look at LOI form to see specific items covered. More can be added based on your needs of your client. Make sure to include your commission with the LOI. Some brokers will add commission agreement on separate document. Just make sure this topic is discussed at some point, and the earlier the better, right? Pay attention to the items of importance we mentioned above. This document will most likely be exchanged and altered several times and may take hours to months to finalize. So in all these LOI, just make sure you at least mention the commission agreement. And if the other broker says, just scratches it out and say per separate agreement, just make sure you get that separate agreement before you move to a lease. You just want to get that out of the way. Not that you think they're being shady, but always just make sure you're protected. Just like you're protecting your client, make sure you're protecting as well. Once you get into real estate, you realize we work for free a lot, right? We help people out, deals don't work out, they fall apart, we don't get paid. So when the opportunity arises to close a deal, just make sure you're protected. And so we're going to go through this document, and I'm going to pop open several documents, one being a lease, one being a letter of intent. There's definitely several LOI options to use. We have some that are really basic and then some that go into a lot of depth. It really depends on how much you need in the lease. If it's a complex center like a mall, you're probably going to need a little bit more because there's a little bit more clarity that needs to be displayed. If it's just a basic retailer office, the letter of intent doesn't need to be overly complex. It just needs to cover some of the, well, it needs to cover the bases that you need covered, like those special items above. But mainly when you're doing the LOI, it's gonna, I mean, the main things, non-detail, when I say non-detail, I mean insurance and assignment, that kind of stuff. It's always gonna be name of the company, square footage, base rate, what kind of lease it is, triple net gross, lease term, tenant improvement allowance, that kind of stuff, right? More of the money talk. All right, so in that letter of intent can go back. I mean, I've had letters of intent go back for like 3 months. Meeting, but it can happen. Sometimes it can take a day, but it can take a while. Just be prepared. All right, so lease agreement. So once you've got the LOI signed off, everyone's agreed to it, we put that onto a lease. Now, if you're with the landlord side, I'm sorry, if you're with the listing broker side, as the tenant rep, more than likely, the ownership has a lease agreement that they've used in the past they like. So they're gonna type up the lease with the information from the LOI. They're just gonna put it on the lease, send it off to you, and it's going to be much more in detail. It can be anywhere from 10 pages to 40. So just be ready to read. All right, so once accepted by both parties, we move forward the lease agreement. Generally, I just repeated it. There you go. Generally, the owner has a contract form they use, know and like. We generally see the listing broker and owner type up the actual lease agreement. Your job is to make sure everything you talked about in the LOI has been placed in the lease and has the correct wording. Again, pay attention to the items of importance we talked about earlier. This is where the details need to be read through, specifically those paragraphs, right? The devil's in the details. So reading thoroughly will make sure you are covered. Always advise your client to seek approval of an attorney. You know, I will review this document and come back to you with any concerns I have. However, I am not an attorney, and should you desire one, we encourage it, right? Always encourage an attorney. Protect yourself always. Once agreed upon by both parties, make sure everything is signed properly. Your lease document is now executed and the dates and activities set in lease begin, right? That's when the finish out starts, the commencement date starts clicking away, right? Congratulate your client, come from contribution again, gift card to Office Depot, lunch on you. If you can be creative, be creative. Again, go watch giftology, see what they like, what are they passionate about, come from contribution, make it unique. For example, if you know your client uses a desk, get him a new nameplate. If he loves golf, get him a pass for 4 at a nice club. Ask for the referral. Commission agreement. Lease commission vary from a purchase. So there's no title company here. We're not going to a closing. Once you have finalized the lease, you need to complete the office paperwork and make sure you have everything turned in to your back office of your company. With that paperwork is an invoice. So us as the tenant brokers, not even your company, if you're at the big firm, your company will, but independent brokers, we have to send an invoice to the other broker to get paid, right? You need to fill in the invoice and email it to the owner's representative. Leasing commissions are generally paid in 2 parts. First half upon execution of a lease, and the second half upon commencement, move-in, or when they start paying for rent. So we got to invoice twice. First, upon execution, we're expecting to get 50% of our commission that day or within 30 days. And then the second they open for business or whatever you agreed upon in that lease agreement, invoice again, and then the second half comes in that way. That's just the way it's done. Now, follow up. Keep touching base with your client during build out and move in to make sure they are being taken care of. Most people don't do that. Make sure you do. It's important. Again, it's the small things. 30 days after moving into space, drop by for a visit. Shows you're a professional and you value them as a client. Again, ask for the referral. Right? So that's just the rundown of kind of the process and steps of going through the lease. When you just knock through the lease. Lead gen, follow up, set a meeting, ask all the questions on why it's important to them, go do searches, then go do property tours, then write a letter of intent, then move it to a lease, then execute, then follow up, right? Let me share my screen again. And after, at the end, I'll show you the other documents because there's several. All right, let's go. I think I have homework though. And we talked about this the last module. But when people refer deals, they're like, I don't want to do leases. There's no money in it. But this is that same example again, where, we have that 5-minute phone call with Joe. Hey, Robert, my friend Joe needs a commercial building for his business. Please help him out. Great. And then I start asking questions. Hey, Robert, I need 7,500 square feet of office space for my business, 10 offices, open area, conference room, break room, IT closet, 5-year deal. I need it basically within 45 days if we can find it. All right, great. I get to work. Find some space. This is the deal. 7,500 square feet, lease rates 28 gross, simple numbers. That's $210,000 per year. Times 5, that's $1 million total lease, right? 4% commission rate in Austin, Texas, and Dallas is 4.5. That's $42,000. 25% referral going back is $10,500. That's $126,000 an hour. That's fantastic. And the whole reason we posted this again is because show this to a residential agent. Like, where else can you get $126,000 an hour? I know your bread and butter is residential. I just want to be a resource for you on the commercial side. Who do you know that I could help? How can I be of service? All right, so let's get into some action items. What area of town has the most stable retail? Every city has an area that just predominantly does fantastic. Even if a business fails or goes out, it's filled up in a weekend, right? What area has had the same tenants the longest, or has always been full and the center has remained busy? People traffic, right? Go find that area. Once you locate, then ask, what makes this center better than the other? What is missing in the other locations? Also start thinking, how does the tenant mix work in a location and make a difference, right? Every retail center is different. The larger centers have a certain type of mix. The hyper local retail in front of a brand new subdivision have their own tenant mix. Just start noticing, take a look, see who leases there. What do all the smaller centers have or don't have? The tiny strip centers by themselves, what stands out? Start to look and understand the draw, the attraction, and how certain locations win or lose. Stay in curiosity. Like there's a reason. There's a reason some of these centers are always winning. All right. So I'm gonna wrap this up by rolling through this quick video. And I don't want to do it on your own. I want to do it right now because it's a pretty cool video and it's worth the watch. Let's take a look.
The world continues to be driven by data. Sourced from trillions of individual data points, every move we make is tracked, collated and analysed, at home, at work and at leisure. The algorithms that manage the data are designed to help us gain deeper insights into consumer behaviour, to present them and us with more focused solutions and new commercial opportunities. This helps make our lives safer, easier, more economical, more environmentally conscientious. The impact this has had on us as individuals is seen no more clearly than in the retail sector. What we buy, where we buy and how we buy defines the new generation of consumers. Here are 8 insights into what the future of retail may look like in 2030 and beyond. Insight 1. The power of prediction. The power of prediction has enabled decision-making to be outsourced to machines. The advanced integration of trillions of connected sensors provides deeper insights into the buying patterns of consumers. This has enabled retailers to anticipate their requirements before they can themselves, helping the consumer to make the right decision every time. Predictive shopping algorithms are able to auto-replenish supplies direct to the consumer's appliances. No more running out of pet food, and the fridge is always stocked with essentials. The speed and efficiency of logistics is dramatically increased, and the number of returned items is minimised. This frees up the consumer's time and disposable income for more experiential shopping and enhanced leisure time with family and friends. Insight 2. Consumer experiences are specific, not generic. Advanced urban design, influenced by increased employee mobility, has driven the development of new levels of fully integrated living. Communities are now local hubs that give people everything they need for day-to-day life in one centralised place: retail, residential and work and leisure space. The level of personal interaction extends to physical and virtual concierge services. Knowing a customer's buying habits, their leisure interests, their style and colour preferences means that retailers present a uniquely personalised experience through an increased number of niche centres. There is less focus on everything for everybody and more attention paid to smaller, targeted consumer segments. Insight 3. Personal ownership of cars has dramatically reduced. The inefficiency of vehicles being unused 95% of the time has been overcome by the dramatic growth in driverless and completely autonomous modes of transport. The majority of them are now owned by large fleet management companies who provide an instant on-demand service. These new vehicles are produced by co-creative partnerships between technology companies and car manufacturers. This on-demand transport service has dedicated routes, so for them there are no jams, no hold-ups, no accidents. Car ownership is reduced to groups of transport enthusiasts who drive purely for passion and pleasure, not for convenience. Insight 4. Buy what you want, where and how you want is the norm. Advances in smart device technology allows consumers to literally buy what they see, anywhere, anytime, 24/7. Simple, real-time image capture analysis makes everything shoppable from any source. The increase in product placement across all media drives a new style of brand marketing. Software provides detailed product information, including sizes, colours, availability and delivery options. It will also present consumers with similar or complementary products at a range of price points. This drives the new hyper-efficient supply chain model from manufacture through real-time stock control to final delivery. This means niche goods are increasingly manufactured in region because the demand for instant purchase has risen exponentially. Insight 5. Stores have become showrooms and experiential brand centres. Shopping has become an immersive sensory brand engagement because, despite the speed and ease of access to online merchandise, the shopper in 2030 still has the desire to visit a physical store to see, feel and experience specific products themselves. To service this trend, stores have become experiential brand centres or showrooms manned by highly trained product specialists who provide enhanced customer service with high levels of product personalisation and in-depth product training and advice. Purchases are delivered the same day from central warehouses direct to home or store. This means that retail real estate is dedicated to sales, not storage. Insight 6. Pure play is no longer an important part of retail. But there hasn't been a shift from bricks to clicks. In fact, the converse is true. Retailers who started with physical stores have found tremendous growth in online sales because of the new flexible shopping experience that embraces all channels and high levels of consumer-defined criteria. The pure-play online-only brands have taken over physical stores to stay in the game. Only the truly niche pure players exist entirely online for specialist products, spares and parts. Insight 7. Robotics and automation will replace many jobs in the retail sector. 70% of retail roles and processes are now managed by AI-driven machines. Shoppers who don't need to have physical contact with sales staff browse, try and buy without physically paying at the point of purchase. All transactions are automatic using biometric payment systems. Sensors communicate directly with robot devices who run every mundane or routine task in the retail space, the office and at home. From ordering supplies to cooking, cleaning and general maintenance, they control the whole retail supply chain, from manufacturing to stock control and autonomous home deliveries. A customer shopping for clothes chooses their item, tries it on and is scanned so that the actual item they buy fits perfectly because it's literally made to measure, including any additional personalisation. Insight 8. Competition for people's disposable income has increased. The millennials and Generation Z have matured. They're driven more by experiences than by ownership and require access rather than possession. They have more personal free time and seek to learn new advanced skills. This means the leisure industry competes even harder for a larger portion of the retail spend. Retailers have embraced this change and now offer training and tuition as an integral part of their unique purchase experience. Omnichannel marketing is increasingly directed towards AI, which sifts and sorts what customers like, need or want. This drives fiercer competition for retailers to stand out, which means retailers constantly have to rethink and re-engineer the shopping experience they offer to stay current. Change and disruption are the new normal. The focus for retailers and investors is to keep a close eye on emerging technology trends. Use the data available to apply new ways of rethinking the end-to-end retail experience. These are 8 of our insights into the future of retail. We believe these will have a dramatic impact on consumers, retailers and investors. By looking forward, by opening our eyes and our minds, we will be in a position to create the future, not simply react to it. We've prepared a total of 40 insights. To explore the other 32, please visit cbre.com/futureofretail2030.
All right, that's pretty cool. I think a lot of that stuff is definitely we're going to be merging in that direction. So definitely love to hear your feedback on that. Yeah, it's going to be pretty crazy. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share the letter of intent document. Show you a quick glimpse of that. Now this is 7S because my company is 7 Streams Commercial Group. That's my brokerage company. So there's our logo, 7S. This will also be in the resource, so you can manipulate, add, alter. We're gonna have a couple versions of this as well. But yeah, in the beginning, just basic information, letter of intent, broker name. You know, on behalf of broker, we're gonna fill out this basic information. Again, this is a pretty basic one, right? Tenant, ownership, what the use is, what the location is, how large the space is, delivery date, like when is, can we get it if there's a tenant in place, what happens there, when's commencement, initial term, base rental rate. I have this little chart here, but manipulate that, add as many boxes as you need to. What type of lease is it? Renewals, right? Right, when I first got started, we could easily, if we did a 5-year lease, we could have like 2 or 3 years be flat where there's no annual increase. Right now, though, we're seeing I'd say 2 to 5% annual bump in lease rates across the board as we move through the lease. Of course, that's all negotiable, but that's why on that renewal there, it says, tenants shall have the right to 2 3-year options at an additional 5.55% of years lease rate. Now that's high. I wouldn't keep 5.5. I'd try 2 and see what happens. Identification, can we put a sign in the building? Is there a monument? The security deposit is most likely going to be the last month, including triple nets. So if your base was 10,000, triple nets were 3, $13,000 would be your security deposit. Of course, it's negotiable, but that's just, I don't say standard, but it is kind of standard. Tenant improvement, again, without knowing exactly what those costs are, one thing you want to do is get your finish out, your general contractor out there to say, we have to make this ramp ADA compliant. We need a new wall here, blah, 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 blah. It's going to cost $50,000. Then you negotiate how much of that can you get the ownership to cover, right? Now, one thing is I don't like to assume. I like to ask that question while I'm talking to the broker. What kind of allowance is the ownership willing to assist my client with? I don't want to guess. I don't want to lowball my client, right? I want to see what they're willing to offer first, and then I come back with what I think we can get, right? Access, landlord responsibilities. There's that HVAC. And again, that's under landlord. I try and post that all in the landlord. Brokerage commission, make sure that's in there. If you look at that last sentence under broker commission, I wrote this in there. I get this kicked out more times than not, but in the event of a lease renewal, my brokerage will be entitled to a commission equal to 2% of the base rental proceeds over the lease renewal term. I've had more luck getting this done with office or industrial. On retail, I've not had any success asking for renewals because the ownership knows, look, if they have a great location for the restaurant, they have brand following, people love this place, they're not going anywhere. Why should I have to pay you again? So that's a harder fight. And honestly, right now, I don't know the last time I got a renewal approved. They're almost always being kicked out. And the other broker is probably assisting with that. Like, we don't have to do that, which is right. They don't. It used to be more prevalent back in the day. Things are changing. Like at some point, I'm assuming we're going to get to a 3 and 3. So more of a 3 to 3 landlord / listing side. I'm assuming the residential commissions are going to start tearing down. But we'll see what happens. Interesting times. All right, conditions to offer. If there's anything you need to add in there, just to have clarity. And then of course, this letter of intent, just basic terminology there, how to contact me, etc. So that is a basic letter of intent. I'm going to now share a lease invoice. Let me hop over there. So now we're going to share a lease invoice just to kind of give you a idea what that looks like. Now I've had several of these through the years, but again, manipulate, alter, it can be simple, it can be complex. Again, don't overthink this. It's just a straight invoice you're sending to the broker saying, hey, I know we worked on a deal on this date. This is the tenant, this is your owner, this is the lease agreement, this is the total value of the lease that I will be paid on. This is what I'm expecting in total. I expect this first tranche, this first 50% on X date, right? Just follow up. Just basic information here. And these, again, these are all in your resource guide. I'm just rocking through these real quick, but they're all in your resources. So all this is with you. Okay, I'm gonna go over a quick, and this is the basic of basic again, because I don't like to make things complex. I think simplicity and clarity are key, and sometimes people go over the top. This is just a basic of basic commission agreements. This letter hereby serves as an agreement between so-and-so listing agent and Seven Streams Commercial Group tenant agency, whereas listing agency agreed to pay a commission agreement in the amount of 4% of the base rental rates, total lease extension price being, put that total price there, total commission due to Seven Streams Commercial, fee is due in 2 installments, 1 upon lease commencement, blah, blah, blah. That's it. Add their info and just keep it simple. and then add that, manipulate it, whatever you need to do. Let me see, I think I had one more document. Oh, yeah. So this is just a like a client qualification sheet. You know, this is just, I don't want to say a memory jogger, but these are just boxes you can check off as you're talking to someone for the first time. And once you get it from there, you want to put it on your CRM so you can have better follow-up. But again, it doesn't matter this or what NDA you use or what anything, as long as you're using documents consistently, right? It's like, you know what a good CRM is? One that you use, right? Same thing with this. It doesn't matter what you use to get information, just do it consistently. Well, thanks guys. Hope you enjoyed tenant representation. Feel free and ask questions, go to the mastermind group, post questions. One thing I would love to see start happening is more people talking about, this is the product type that's moving the most right now. This is what we're seeing in our market. We've seen the lease rates drop. We've seen the triple nets go up. We've seen more gross leases. We've seen industrial skyrocket. Right now in 2020, industrial is going crazy, right? Retail is suffering massively, right? Start posting. What are we seeing? How can we help each other be better at our job, at what we're doing in our communities? Let's all be better together. So again, I appreciate it. Thanks so much. Ask questions, check out those resources, go to CBRE and watch that other video, because there's one, the future of real estate, I believe in 2030. There's a couple of pretty cool videos. Yeah, ask the questions. Get ready for module 4, which is landlord representation. And again, thank you so much for being on this journey with us. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll talk soon. Thanks, guys. And don't forget, educate, lead gen, follow up, get into action. Thanks, guys.